I want you to, imagine something for a second. Just imagine you're living your entire life in Canada.
Right. Just a totally normal, everyday routine.
Exactly. You're minding your own business, going to your local job, paying your provincial taxes, dealing with that brutal winter snow.
Oh, yeah. The Canadian winter?
Yeah. And then, out of absolutely nowhere, you discover that you are caught squarely in the crosshairs of a massive United States government crackdown.
Wow.
And this is a crackdown that was, specifically designed to hunt down secretive billionaires and offshore tax evaders.
Which, I mean, you are not.
Right. You aren't a billionaire, you have never hidden a dime, and yet this massive regulatory machinery is suddenly aimed right at you.
It sounds incredibly dystopian. I mean, like a case of mistaken identity on a geopolitical scale, where the government machinery is completely blind to who it's actually targeting.
It really does, but it is entirely real. So welcome to the deep dive. Today, our mission is to explore this chaotic collision between sweeping, well-intentioned government regulations and just ordinary everyday lives.
Yeah, the people just trying to get by.
Exactly. We are looking at how a policy explicitly designed to catch the biggest fish in the ocean can, accidentally end up crushing the little guy.
It's wild.
We'll be unpacking what this whole mess reveals about the inescapable law of unintended consequences.
And to guide us through this, we are looking at a really fascinating artifact today. It's an archived blog post from August 2011.
Good year.
Yeah, it was written by Phil Hodgen, a tax attorney at the Hodgen Law Firm. And the title just perfectly captures the sheer exhaustion of dealing with this topic. It's called What Hath God Wrought? FBAR edition.
I love that. It is a brilliantly dramatic title for a tax law blog.
It really is.
And the narrative spark for this entire post, it comes from a single email. So one of Hodgen's readers sends him a link to an online community called the Expat Forum.
Right, just the standard internet message board.
Exactly. And the reader is just appalled by the panic they are seeing over there, and they specifically point Hodgen to the plight of a woman on the forum named Kate.
And Kate's situation, it serves as the emotional anchor for Hodgen's entire piece. Because her dilemma is, objectively speaking, it's just absurd.
Totally.
According to the forum post, Kate has never lived or worked in the United States.
Never.
Yet somehow, she is completely tangled in this absolute labyrinth of the IRS.
And the psychological impact on her is severe. I mean, we're not talking about a minor administrative annoyance here. This is a life-altering crisis for her.
She's terrified.
She really is. She's forced to consider these incredibly drastic measures, like literally posting on the internet about disappearing off the U.S. radar or, going through the massive, expensive legal hurdle of renouncing her citizenship.
Which is not easy.
No, not at all. Okay, let's unpack this. How does a person who has never lived in the United States become so utterly terrified of the Internal Revenue Service?
Right.
I mean, it feels like getting a massive bankrupting speeding ticket in a country you've never even visited.
That analogy captures her panic perfectly. What's fascinating here is the underlying mechanism causing all of this, which Hodgen unpacks in the post. It's the FBAR.
FBAR, right.
Yes, that stands for Foreign Bank and Financial Accounts Report. And to understand why Kate is so terrified, we really have to look at how this mechanism actually works.
Okay, lay it on us.
So the U.S. mandates that if you are a U.S. person and you have foreign financial accounts whose aggregate value exceeds $10,000 at any point in the year, you must declare them to the Treasury Department.
Wait. An aggregate of $10,000?
Yes, total, across all accounts.
In the grand scheme of global finance, that is nothing. I mean, if Kate has a basic checking account for her salary, a modest savings account, and maybe like a local Canadian retirement fund, she blows past that threshold almost immediately.
Precisely. The threshold was set decades ago, and it was never adjusted for inflation.
Wow.
And the penalties for failing to file this paperwork, that's what generates the sheer terror Kate is experiencing.
Because they're steep.
Right.
Oh, yeah. Even for a non-willful violation, meaning you simply didn't know this obscure rule existed, the fines can be up to $10,000.
Ouch.
But wait, that's per account, per year.
You have got to be kidding me. Per account. So if she has 3 regular accounts, that's $30,000 just because she didn't know.
Exactly. And it gets worse. If the IRS deems your failure willful, the penalty jumps to 50% of the total balance of the account.
Half of your money.
Half. So you can see how someone like Kate, an accidental American who, might have inherited citizenship from a parent but lived her whole life in Canada, suddenly realizes she could be financially ruined by paperwork she didn't even know she had to file.
That is just, I mean, that's paralyzing. And Hodgen points out that Kate's misery isn't because the IRS specifically has a vendetta against Canadian residents,
Yeah,
right?
no, not at all.
Her situation is just this bizarre ripple effect of the U.S. government's broader war on Swiss banks.
Right. The intention behind the enforcement was to go after high-rolling tax evaders hiding millions in secret offshore accounts in Geneva. The big fish.
Exactly. To catch those specific billionaires, the government cast this incredibly heavy, sweeping regulatory net over the whole globe.
But, I mean, catching tax evaders in Geneva shouldn't mean bankrupting a local worker in Toronto. Like, where is the filter? How does a law meant for financial criminals end up tormenting a regular person in Canada?
Well, to answer that, Hodgen turns his attention to the lawmakers themselves. He outlines this two-step process of institutional failure.
Yeah.
First, you have Congress. And Hodgen's quite blunt here. He argues that Congress frequently passes ill-conceived laws.
I'm sure a lot of people would agree with that.
Oh, for sure. They write these broad, sweeping mandates with massive penalties, but they're looking at macro-level revenue estimates rather than the micro-level human impacts.
Right, they see the big numbers.
Yeah. And then the Treasury Department, which oversees the IRS, is handed this legislative blunt instrument and told, figure out how to enforce it.
Though it is worth noting Hodgen's very dry, sarcastic aside in the text here.
Oh, yeah, the best part.
He mentions that the Treasury Department is frequently the source of these ill-conceived ideas in the first place, pitching them to Congress, but he says he'll, quote, pass over that without comment.
It's a great moment of tax lawyer snark.
It really is.
But his broader critique of the system is deadly serious. As he watches this endless parade of tax legislation and aggressive enforcement, he concludes that government actors are just completely oblivious to the economic and human reality of what they are doing.
So what does this all mean? If I had to visualize the way these lawmakers operate, it's like, well, think of using a smartphone camera in portrait mode.
Oh, okay.
When you take a photo in portrait mode, the software forces the lens to focus intensely on the immediate foreground, right?
Yeah, blurring everything else.
Exactly. In this case, the foreground is the policy, the rules, and catching the bad guys. But in doing so, all the actual human beings standing in the background, people like Kate, completely blurred out of existence.
That's a really good way to put it.
They just become these indistinct shapes that the camera just ignores.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you've just perfectly described what economists call externalities,
Right.
which is the exact concept Hodgen brings up to explain this blindness. An externality is a cost or consequence that affects a third party who didn't choose to incur it.
Like collateral damage.
Basically, yeah. The government is hyper-focused on its primary target, the Swiss bank evaders. And because Kate's story is lost in that fuzzy, out-of-focus background of this massive policy, government officials can pretend she doesn't exist.
Out of sight, out of mind.
It's a textbook example of the law of unintended consequences.
But that institutional blindness has a profound human cost. I mean, when you look at Kate's sheer terror, it makes the bureaucratic system look like an absolute meat grinder.
It really does.
It's easy to picture the people running this machine, the agents actually enforcing these rules at the IRS, as just heartless bureaucrats sitting in cubicles, completely detached from the pain they are causing.
Yeah, it is easy to make that assumption. But Hodgen shares a really surprising insider perspective that complicates that narrative quite a bit.
Oh.
He reveals in the blog post that he actually personally knows a government official who was central to creating a lot of this specific avalanche of FBAR hell.
Wait. So the person who essentially drew the blueprints for this entire bureaucratic maze is actually aware of the damage it's causing.
Yes. And the twist is that Hodgen describes this architect as a deeply sympathetic person.
Really?
Yeah. This official is not a monster oblivious to the pain of ordinary people. Hodgen argues that on an individual human level, the people who work at the Treasury and the IRS would probably be horrified to see Kate's situation.
That's wild.
He says if they were sitting across the desk from her, they would actually want to help.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting because that creates a massive contradiction.
How so?
Well, if the individual IRS agent is a sympathetic human being who sees that this Canadian woman is just collateral damage, why doesn't that matter? Sympathy doesn't pay the bills.
That's true.
If the law dictates these incredibly strict, life-ruining penalties we talked about, isn't the IRS agent legally obligated to enforce them? Tax law is notoriously rigid. You can't just ignore the rule book because you feel bad for someone, right?
Well, you are touching on the core friction point of administrative law. But Hodgen counters that assumption of rigidity with a really powerful everyday analogy from his own life.
What's the analogy?
He writes about the local police in his town.
Yeah.
He points out that all the police officers carry guns. They have the ultimate coercive power sitting right there on their hips.
Sure.
But they don't draw their weapons and shoot out the tires of your car just because your parking meter expired.
Oh, wow. Yeah. The punishment has to fit the crime. And the enforcement has to match the reality of the situation.
Exactly the point Hodgen is making to the IRS. In administrative law, there's a concept called prosecutorial discretion.
Right. They can choose when to prosecute.
Exactly. His argument is that just because you have these draconian FBAR penalties written on the books, it doesn't mean you are forced to deploy them in every single instance.
You have a choice.
You have the discretion to distinguish between a billionaire hiding assets in Geneva and a teacher depositing a paycheck in Toronto. You don't have to wave a gun around menacingly and shoot a driver just to scare everyone else into feeding quarters into the parking meter.
That makes total sense. But, I mean, when a system relies on threats that severe just to enforce compliance, you start wondering if the underlying rule is even legitimate in the first place.
A lot of people wonder that.
Yeah, looking at the source material, a lot of people are asking that exact question. The sheer disproportion of treating a regular person's checking account like a billionaire's tax haven, it ignited a fiery debate right at the bottom of Hodgen's blog post down in the comments section.
And, the comments section on a tax blog isn't usually where you expect to find revolutionary philosophy.
No, usually it's pretty dry.
But this one delivers. We have to look at a commenter named Jackie Bunyan.
Okay, Jackie.
And just to be totally clear for you listening, we are strictly unpacking Jackie's personal opinions and theories here as they were written in the source text, just to understand the depth of the frustration these rules generate.
Right. We are not taking sides. We are just looking at the arguments she's laying out. And she comes out swinging.
She really does.
She says this goes way beyond unintended consequences.
She takes aim at the very root of the issue, which is the fundamental principle of citizenship-based taxation.
Which is pretty rare, right?
Very rare. This requires a bit of context because the United States is incredibly unique in this regard. The vast majority of the planet, essentially 99% of countries' taxes based on residency.
So where you live.
Right. If you live and work in France, you pay taxes to France. If you move to Japan, you pay Japan. But the U.S. tax is based on citizenship, regardless of where on the planet you actually reside.
Wow.
And Jackie calls this a punishment tax and goes so far as to label it U.S. fiscal imperialism.
Fiscal imperialism. I mean, that is a very heavy accusation to level against a tax policy. What is the logic behind her argument there?
Well, she argues that the foundational precept of a government's right to tax its people is the provision of services.
It's a social contract.
Exactly. Yeah. The social contract dictates that you pay taxes, and in return, the government builds roads, funds schools, provides emergency services, all that stuff.
Right.
She points to Kate, the Canadian resident, as the ultimate illustration of why citizenship-based taxation violates this contract.
Because she gets nothing from the U.S.
Exactly. The U.S. is claiming the right to track and tax her financial life, but she receives absolutely zero services from the United States. She drives on Canadian roads, she uses Canadian hospitals, and relies on Canadian police.
So from Jackie's perspective, the U.S. is projecting its power across sovereign borders to extract resources without offering anything in return.
That's the core of her critique. She even claims that the Supreme Court decision that originally upheld citizenship-based taxation rests on very shaky legal grounds. But her most intense theory is actually psychological.
Oh, how so?
She suggests that the U.S. maintains this system out of fear. Fear that if citizens could escape the tax system simply by moving abroad, there would be a massive exodus of wealth. So, according to Jackie, the government essentially built a tax prison.
The tax prison? But wait, a tax prison implies that you are trapped. But theoretically, people like Kate can leave the system, right? Like, they can renounce their citizenship.
They can, but the mechanics of leaving are what make Jackie's prison analogy so potent.
It's not easy.
Far from it. If you want to officially renounce your U.S. citizenship to escape the FBAR maze, the government doesn't just let you walk away.
Of course not.
They hit you with an exit tax.
Wait, an exit tax?
Yes, which can tax you on the unrealized capital gains of your global assets, as if you sold everything you own the day before you renounced.
Oh my goodness, that's brutal.
And on top of that, there's a massive administrative fee just to process the renunciation paperwork.
Which naturally leads us to something incredibly telling that we found conceptually grouped with this idea of the tax prison. If we look at the margins of Hodgen's blog posts, there is evidence of just how desperate people are to escape.
Yeah, the sidebar metadata.
Exactly. The sidebar metadata of the blog acts as this real-time thermometer for this wider epidemic of panic. If you look at the most commented posts section, it tells a very clear story.
It really does.
One of the top posts with 35 comments is about the Vancouver consulate backlog for expatriation.
Which is just wild to think about.
Think about the mechanics of what that actually means. There are so many people living in Canada terrified by these sweeping regulations, desperately trying to renounce their U.S. citizenship, that there is a physical backlog at the consulate in Vancouver.
A literal line out the door.
It is a literal bureaucratic traffic jam of people trying to pay their exit fee and flee the tax prison.
This raises an important question, and it's the exact question Jackie leaves us with in her comment. She asks about fundamental human rights.
Right.
If individuals have a basic right to live and work where they choose, how does that freedom coexist with the overreach of a distant tax authority that tracks your local bank accounts anywhere on Earth?
It's a huge philosophical question, but while the philosophers and commenters debate human rights, people on the ground just need immediate help.
They're panicking.
Yeah, they have to navigate this geopolitical maze in real time. And to survive the panic, they turn to the internet. They go to forums looking for a lifeline, which actually led to a highly ironic, almost tragicomic twist for the author of our blog post.
Yes, this is the no good deed goes unpunished segment of our exploration.
It really is.
It highlights the absurdity of internet bureaucracy layering directly on top of government bureaucracy.
Exactly. So down in the comments section of the blog, Kate, the original panicked woman whose plight sparked the whole article, she actually shows up.
In the comments.
In the comments. She writes a comment saying, "Hey, you blogged about my post. Thanks for the solidarity."
That's nice.
It's this genuinely nice human moment of connection across the digital void. But then Phil Hodgen responds to her and reveals a shocking follow-up.
Yeah, Phil tells Kate that after he read her story, he actually went over to the expat forum to answer her questions directly.
Which is a nice thing to do.
Right. He tried to provide some professional clarity and calm her terrifying situation, but instead of being welcomed, the forum administrators sent him a stern warning.
They accused a tax attorney who was offering free help to a panicked user of engaging in advertising.
It's ridiculous.
He essentially wore out his welcome and got threatened by forum moderators for trying to throw a life preserver to someone who was literally drowning.
He tried to throw a life preserver into the water, and the lifeguards told him his life preserver didn't meet the forum's dress code.
That is the perfect way to put it.
And if you want proof of just how many people are desperately creating water out there, you just have to look back at that sidebar metadata again.
Right, because right next to the post about the Vancouver expatriation backlog, the #1 most commented post on Hodgen's entire site with 60 comments is titled, "H-1B Person in Need of FBAR Assistance."
60 comments.
Yes.
The net is so wide that it's catching people holding temporary work visas. People who are in the U.S. for a specific job suddenly realize their financial accounts back in their home country are now subject to the exact same draconian FBAR reporting rules and potential fines.
It's catching everyone. And right next to that overwhelming evidence of severe legal distress, there is a little subscription box on the website.
Oh, I saw this.
The blog is cheerfully offering you the chance to subscribe to Phil's Jello Shots newsletter.
The juxtaposition is just incredible.
It perfectly captures the bizarre blend of our modern digital reality. You have this mundane, almost quirky internet life, signing up for a newsletter about Jello shots, sharing the exact same pixel real estate as people experiencing genuine, life-altering terror over international tax law.
It's the modern human experience, neatly summarized in a single sidebar.
It really is. So, let's step back and look at the whole picture we've uncovered today. We started with a Canadian woman's sudden sheer panic at discovering she's a target of the IRS's massive FBAR dragnet.
Yep.
We moved into the blurry foreground of government policy, where lawmakers creating the rules are totally disconnected from the realities of enforcing them.
The portrait mode.
Exactly. And we waded into the intense philosophical debate over fiscal imperialism, exit taxes, and the concept of citizenship as a tax prison.
A lot of heavy stuff.
And we ended up looking at a bewildered tax lawyer getting yelled at by internet moderators for trying to help.
It is a sprawling journey. And I think the vital takeaway for you listening is Every piece is abstract legislation, no matter how distant, how well-intentioned, or how focused on catching the bad guys it seems on paper, eventually lands on the shoulders of a real person.
Someone has to deal with it.
Right. The rules made at the very top of the bureaucratic ladder, often with institutional blindness to externalities, eventually have to be navigated by someone at the very bottom. And sometimes that person is just trying to live their life, deposit their paycheck, and deal with the snow in Canada.
It really makes you wonder about the future. I mean, if you think about the trends right now, global mobility is constantly rising.
Oh, absolutely.
Remote work is allowing people to live literally anywhere on the globe, maintaining financial ties across multiple borders effortlessly.
It's the norm now.
So we leave you with this final thought to mull over as those national borders continue to blur for the average person. Will citizenship-based taxation eventually become technologically and socially impossible to enforce?
Hmm.
Or will the system just keep waving its gun around, turning every ordinary global citizen into a permanent tax fugitive, just waiting to get pulled over by a government they've never even met?